When did you realize that by not dating or hanging around a certain person was actually dodging a major bullet? Was talking to this girl for a couple months in 11th grade. Didn't pan out though. A few months go by, senior year starts, and the whole school is abuzz with talk of her being incarcerated for stabbing her boyfriend. OP asked for people who dodge bullets, not knives. My ex's mom got really drunk and kissed me with tongue during a Christmas party at her sister's house. On the way home after, I told my ex about it and she defended her mom, saying we're a close family, you just wouldn't understand. That sound too close for a family. I knew my best friend from 6th to 11th grade was kind of out there, compulsive liar, kind of a creep around girls, back and forth between a party boy and a creepy religion nut. I guess the last part isn't too odd from a teenage kid trying to figure himself out, but it was just an extra layer of all the weirdness. But we had a similar sense of humor and I was a social outcast too. There were about 6 of us in a circle of friends that rostered in and out through junior high and high school, but the 2 of us were the core of the friend group and the only 2 constants for the entire duration. Senior year of high school I became more popular and we drifted apart. To be honest, I was kind of avoiding him. Maybe a bit of a dong move on my part, but he was getting more out there as we got older. He even talked to my dad about us drifting apart and my dad gave me a speech about how long we've been friends and I shouldn't just bail on him because I was suddenly popular. Against my better judgment I reconnected with him and we stayed in touch after high school and through early adulthood. About 2 years after graduation I was finishing up my initial military training and got a call from said friend. He called to tell me that one of our mutual friends from the group I mentioned earlier had committed suicide, and described it in deep detail. I was wrecked. Friend 2 was my second best friend before graduating, but we had lost contact when he moved out of state. Bit of background on friend 2: he had wanted to join the Navy and become a SEAL, but he couldn't because of an underlying health condition that was found on his entry physical. He was also kind of an emotional train wreck sometimes. So while it was surprising that he committed suicide, it wasn't unbelievable by any stretch. So friend 1 and I stay in touch during my time in the military. He wandered about a bit for the first couple years but settled back in our hometown, but we never lost contact. We weren't as close as before because of my career but still talked occasionally. Facebook helped a lot with that. Speaking of Facebook, in 2010, 11 years after the phone call, I get a message and a friend request from friend 2. I was floored. It was really him and he had a kid and a super happy life. I went around for a decade thinking this guy had killed himself and he'd been living life like a champ. I instantly broke off all contact with friend 1 and haven't spoken to him since. TLDR. Friend lied about another friend committing suicide and I didn't find out for over a decade. Guy I was friends with in elementary and middle school but then had a falling out in high school over something stupid and we never reconnected. I felt a little bad about it, but then years later I saw him on the news cause he got arrested for filming up girls' skirts with a hidden camera at the CNE affair. Needless to say, I stopped feeling bad about our falling out after that. While Torrentonian spotted, I think I remember that news report. This one guy, a sci-fi fantasy geek type about 20 years old, who used to hang around the local coffee shop. He did sometimes appear in women's clothing, but that wasn't an issue. The issue was his insisting on talking to everyone about the 12-year-old girl he was in love with, from afar. He sat down with me one day, started in on his love obsession story, and I told him I didn't want to hear it, because I didn't want to be a witness at his trial, and I never talked to him again. Goddamn it, Lolita is not a how-to manual. I hadn't seen a friend in person for like 6 months, because she had gotten into dealing and I wasn't willing to be around it. I went to visit and meet her baby, and out comes a lockbox of random pills and drugs. That was the last time we hung out. Now she's a druggie with 3 kids who have been taken away. Dang. The thing is, it just happens a lot more than you expect. Sorry to hear that. Met a girl at a bar and did a drunk hookup. She wanted to meet up again and I figured okay, we were both drunk so I really don't know how she is sober. End up going out with my buddies and their girlfriends. She then proceeds to take a bunch of pics with them within the first half hour of meeting them and uploading them on Facebook. Asks me to go spend a weekend at her parents' place. and basically clinging on to me the whole night and getting pee if I would talk to one of my buddies over her even for a quick minute. Decided it was too much and told her it was moving too fast. This leads to her texting and calling me every night and driving by my house every day to see if my car was there. Also every bar I would go to I would end up running into her. Didn't realize this until I saw on my Snapchat that she could see where I was. She scared the crap out of me. When I realized that she had to put down every single thing I did or wanted to do because she couldn't stand me doing better than her at anything. She only liked me when I was as miserable as she was and would do anything to get me there. I'm so glad you're out of that toxic dynamic. Was in a church youth group with the Catholic priest's niece. I was like 14 years old. Came on to me very hard, but I was really a bit immature at the time. 6 months later she was pregnant and definitely having that baby. I would have had a very different life than I do now. Yeah, but think of it this way, bro. If you have a kid at 14, by the time you're 35 he'd be 21 and you guys could totally hang out at bars together and try to impregnate other women together. That would be worth it. Stopped hanging out with a buddy of mine senior year of high school because he was just too reckless and out of control. 3 years later, he came to a house party we threw and I had a nice talk with him that ended with me saying, I'm glad you're doing well. Just don't start anything with anyone tonight and relax and have a good time. Then we're all good. 2 buddies and I went to grab some food and we get a call from my roommate. Yeah, Ryan just got too drunk. Punched a girl in the face thinking it was me. Then drove away. The girl he punched was 5'2". My roommate is 6'4". IDK man. Drove. Rage panic very drunk drive. Met a guy in the local nerd community. We hit it off. Start becoming more than friends. He's moving too fast and I wasn't feeling it, so I end it. A month later he disappears from social media. 3 months later, still complete silence. I got curious and started searching. Found that he'd been arrested for sexual acts with a minor. YIKES. Several years ago, a dude who was a waiter at a restaurant in the shopping center where I worked started crushing on me for a couple of weeks. He first came up to me one day when I was in line at a drugstore in the complex. I had never even seen him before then, but he started in right away with oddly persistent questions that had more to do with trying to ask me out rather than attempting to get to know me first. I started getting nervous for some reason and hastily told him I had to go back to my store. Well, a few days later he showed up there and managed to corner me and ask me all the same crap, more persistently this time. Now, I hate it when guys try to ask me out when I'm on the job, since they're somewhat exploiting the fact that I have to be polite and attentive to people when they come in to shop. So I put on my best fake, smiley retail face and turned him down more forcefully this time. Not a week after that, I heard that he had been fired for instigating a shouting match which quickly escalated into a fist fight with one of the other waiters at the place where he worked during dinner hours. I hate that too. If you wanna ask me out when I'm on the clock, then do it carefully. Like give me a business card or paper with your number and say I think you are pretty, or whatever and would like to get to know you a little better. Here is my number if you wouldn't mind me taking you out for coffee and then walk away. Don't wait for an answer. Previous boyfriend, we were only together for like a month. 3 years after breakup I was bored and stalking some old friends and found his Tumblr. It was not anonymous, and full of really weird hentai. His girlfriend had written a post about how he had made her sad, but then had let her blow him to make her feel better. And he had commented on that post saying he only made her upset so she would stop being a C. Bullet dodged. I met a guy at a party and we hit it off. Hung out the following night and then 2 days later he was arrested for armed robbery. Spent 4 years in prison. Definitely wasn't boyfriend material. Yeah, BF material doesn't get caught. Met a chick who was beautiful. In passing conversation she had said her boyfriend has cancer and she feels like it should affect her emotionally but she just didn't care. He died. I quickly passed on that one and met the best woman ever. Ironically I now have terminal cancer and she is the best mother of our kids, wife and support life could have given me. Stay strong buddy. Sounds like your wife is awesome. Wishing you all the very best. Guy I got acquainted with in a summer program. For swimming lessons, I think. We were like 9 and I already thought he's in butthole because he keeps pestering me to get rid of my swimming trunks so he can see my crotch. Whenever the instructor isn't looking, me and couple of other girls that he also harassed would always push him to the pool. If it's a bad day we would mess with his floaties. Don't worry, we're on a 4 featuring deep pool but he didn't know that. He's also the only one I didn't keep in touch with that summer. Fast forward to 2015. 16-year-old me saw his name on the news. Headlines read, Uber driver sexually assaulted passenger. Tried to force his sole female passenger who rode shotgun to give him head. Her phone was recording the whole thing and he was caught very quickly after. In my country, attempted rape is guaranteed to give you a life sentence. His bail is set around $300k. Still in the slammer, last I heard of him. Halfway through my last year of college, my best friend at the time never wanted to do anything, and it wasn't like we were super poor. I would offer to sub him for nights out, day trips, lunches, but he just wanted to stay home and watch TV. I started doing stuff without him and one day he complained to me about always going out. I told him, look, you're a good friend but I want to be social. I want to let loose a little. You can't rely on me to keep you company for your 88th Buffy marathon, and he flipped his crap. I went out for the rest of the day and saw another group of workmates at a bar, joined them and found out he kept calling, pretending to be me, to get me days off of work, but my boss figured it out because I'd always show up 10 minutes after he called. Stunned is the only word I can muster to explain how I felt right then and there. I refused to see him after that. From what I heard, he moved into his grandparents' home and still, 15 years later, does nothing. This is very recent. I was supposed to go on a date with a guy only yesterday, Saturday. I had met him on POF, chatted for about a week and a half and then planned to go for lunch. Despite the fact I kept telling him to go slow as this was my first date since becoming single, the breakup has messed me up a bit and I was still feeling fragile etc. It was like I never said any of that at all. He wanted me to French kiss him the moment I met up with him and kept saying things like, I'm gonna give you the best date so your mom is proud of me and I'm gonna be charming and you're gonna fall. So it got to Friday and I realized I really didn't want to go anymore. I even posted on the anxiety thread on here as it had set me off. I eventually cancelled and said I think we're expecting different things from this date. He then told me he thought I was immature anyway. Yesterday morning he sent me a message that said "Biaitk." Oh how I laughed. I'm sorry about your breakup and huge bullet dodge there. I wouldn't use POF though. There are strange people from all sides on there and loads of bot troll catfish accounts. There is a reason the website's nickname is Plenty of Catfish. Free-wise, OkCupid worked out very well for some friends of mine, as well as Match if you want to go the paid route. My roommate, who I considered my big brother figure, had a wolf husky that bit me. I hid it from him and told him I had cut my hand doing something else because he was going through a lot of crap and I didn't want to stress him out. The dog became aggressive with me again and I had to lock it in a room. I called him and told him what had been going on and he yelled at me about my puppy, who has permanent scars on his face from this other dog, peeing on the carpet. I probably should have told him right away because I'm sure that was a lot to take in at once. But he didn't show an inkling of concern for me and just tried to start putting blame in me for unrelated crap. I was super into this guy and he ended up dating one of my friends. No hard feelings or anything, I never even told her I was into him. Turns out he was a really crappy guy and a pathological liar. Dodge a bullet there. I feel bad for introducing them though, she's a real sweetheart and didn't deserve that balls. Lost nearly an entire friendship because of one manipulative person. I was codependent and gaslit and manipulated so much that I thought my world was ending when it came crashing down. About a year out now and I'm no longer a functional alcoholic. I have a group of friends who actually give a crap about me, and my relationships are all give and take. Support and be supported. I don't know what the old group is up to, and I don't particularly care. As long as they stay far away from me, I'm great. I've been through similar. It's important to forgive yourself for believing things when you were being gaslit. When she admitted to lying about something big about her life for weeks, for no good reason, and I realized how many other things she's lied about over the course of years that I swept under the rug. I felt like it was important to me to forgive her every time and always told myself it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. But eventually someone you trust, who supposedly trusts you, lies to you enough times that it all falls apart and you realize you can't honestly know that she's ever telling the truth anymore, even about mundane things. It really sucks, too, because she and I knew each other pretty well and she was going through some of the worst times of her life when I reached my limit with her. I want to be there for her through the tough times, but I just can't be friends with someone who I feel unnecessarily betrayed by all the time. I broke up with my boyfriend when he introduced me to his pregnant girlfriend. I'm a guy. A friend called me a few months later and basically screamed into the phone that I had to read the paper. He had been sexually abusing a younger female relative. IDK who, but I read that his brother started it. Showed him how to do it. He continued from her being 7 until she was 13 or 14. Up to 40 years. D. Dated a guy who started to show signs of being extremely controlling and potentially abusive. After a month I broke up with him. Later on he lost a case on Judge Judy and had a ton of restraining orders against him from many different women. Just a couple of nights ago, I got a call from a friend I hadn't seen in many years. I spoke to her about 2 years ago and I was headed to Las Vegas. She said she wanted to go with me and I was planning on her coming to town. She lives somewhere else and going with me. She flaked out the last minute and I didn't hear back from her even though the plans were pretty concrete. I haven't contacted her since, and 2 nights ago, she called me randomly. Turns out she's homeless now and looking for a place to live. But after listening to her talk, she's nuts. She claims that her mother and father are crazy, her 2 sisters are crazy, her ex-husband is crazy, the social worker that took away her son is crazy, and on and on. Turns out, it seems pretty obvious that she's the crazy one. Duh, if you think everyone is crazy, you are the crazy one. I was acquainted with someone who always asked me about what drama was going on and always wanted to gossip about happenings. I never really responded to her as I don't enjoy that type of talk, especially with near strangers. A few months later I find out that she sends lewd messages to minors on Facebook. She lives in a different country than most of the people she messaged, so it's hard for her to be reported. She would often send messages to people about her sex life and asked if people were virgins. She also advanced on someone telling that she'd be willing to do it with someone to prove that the person she messaged was bi. Glad I never responded to her. I dated a gay homophobe. She used to buy me clothes and pick out my outfits in order to keep me looking a certain way and had some serious sexual hang-ups. She would often tell me it was unacceptable to be holding hands at events where there were children, and she refused to let me go to the Pride Parade because she didn't want me shoving my identity in people's faces. I thought she was just a closet case, but after our relationship ended I realized how much she hated herself, and how much she made me hate myself. Yikes. A friend in high school was getting big into cars, wanted to drive everywhere and do everything in his car and do risky crap. One Friday he asks me if I wanted to come with him and do a run at a place called Trabuco Canyon. I politely decline and stay in all weekend to play World of Warcraft like the true introverted nerd I was. Don't hear from him for a few days, nor did I see him at school the following week. Turns out he tried drifting around a corner and oversteered. Tried to recorrect and oversteered the opposite direction, putting his precious BMW E30 into the side of a mountain. The entire passenger side was gone and pushed into the driver's side. Needless to say I dodged a major bullet and still think of it to this day. You dodged the side of a mountain. A guy I went to college with was one of those really weird guys that went beyond just being socially awkward. The second time he decided to talk to me, he told me that he was giving me his phone number. I tried to get out of it, but I'm pretty socially awkward and I was already on my phone. He snatched my phone from my hand and put his number in, then texted himself, handed my phone back and left. I immediately checked the message he sent to himself and he'd set his contact name as God. I deleted his number and went back to class. 5 minutes later, I got a text, then another, then another. As I was in class I didn't notice for over an hour. His final text was cursing me out for not texting him back and being a massive B, etc. Somehow I managed to avoid him for the rest of the year, but I had mini panics every time I walked through the canteen for the rest of the year. When after my ex and I broke up, he married another woman a few years later and became extremely religious. All of a sudden he had a huge problem with gay marriage and thought it was unnatural, even though when we dated in college he had several gay friends and was the most accepting person you could ever meet. He would rant about it on Facebook and get into arguments with people on Facebook all the time. No. Thanks, Tom Hanks. Bullet dodged. Comma no thanks, Tom Hanks. I have to start using this one. It took me 5 years, if you can believe this. It was a very stressful relationship. She somehow knew exactly how to cause the most amount of stress and pain in the depths of my soul. We were engaged and I was trying to marry her and nail down a date for a wedding. But despite being together for a few years, she kept dodging it. Finally, after 5 years, I realized if we stay together I'll probably die by 40 of a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. I broke it off and moved on. And believe it or not, I regained my black hair within 6 months. I started growing some white hair around my temples while in that relationship. Bullet dodged for sure. And heart attack too probably. I started talking to a girl I work with. First off, bad move on my part from the word go. Don't date co-workers, folks. So we started hanging out, going out for drinks, dinner, and things were quickly moving towards sex. Something told me to pump the brakes and slow down a bit, so I did. We keep hanging out, but then she starts calling me on my way to work every night. Not a problem. I enjoy the company on the drive. Then it quickly changes into don't go to work tonight, come by me instead. Okay, yeah, no, I'm not going to start calling into work to be with you. Then every night turned into she wants to kill herself. Stomp the brakes. Put that idea through the windshield. I'm not going to lie. I stayed talking to her because I thought I could help her through this. Nope. It continued. Almost every night. She was now on stress leave from work because she was suicidal. And every night she needed me to call in and come by her to keep her safe. After so long I told her I couldn't do this anymore and we haven't talked since. She never came back from stress leave. Come to find out she was already fricking some other guy at work. I didn't mind. It's all you, bro. Then she gave him herpes. Bullet very dodged. I would have been stuck. Probably for life with some girl who called me every night wanting to kill herself and I can't leave because she gave me herpes. My first ever boyfriend and I were on a gain and off again from high school. We both met through our mutual love of astronomy and chose to major in physics at different colleges, mind. Anyway, finally after all that he chose another girl over me who was an artist, and when he wrote me to say this he said he chose her because it was great to go home to someone at the end of the day who doesn't know what I'm talking about, and had the gall to say she's even a good cook. Obviously, now that I'm older I'm like, yeah, that one probably wouldn't have worked out. I'm doing my PhD in astronomy and still not the best cook. See, but it's funny how at age 19 all you see is devastation that you're not what the guy wants. I had a friend that I had known since 6th grade. Good guy, nice person, but tried to do stupid things to try to fit in with the wrong crowds from time to time. Senior year of high school, he starts hanging out with one of our old friends that got expelled from high school for something drug related. We stopped hanging out with him after he got expelled. That dude was always a good guy, never forced anyone into anything they didn't want to do, always nice, helpful, and stood up for others. But you know, drug dealer. Well, my buddy started hanging out with this dealer again. I chilled with them a few times but noticed my friend had started talking about doing drugs. He was a health bud before all this, so that was a major red flag to me. I spoke with him a few times about WTF is going on and that he should probably stop hanging out with this dealer and his crew. He refused to listen to me and insisted that I join them. I cut ties with him eventually. I later found out that after our class graduated and started going to college, he didn't go. He kept hanging with this crowd and became an addict. He called me a few times a few years later and told me what's been going on. He claimed that he joined a gang, that he and his gang got my back if anything, that he does drugs but only for fun and can quit anytime he wants. He works with a car dealership and can get me free cars. All the ramblings of a drug addict. My mom spoke with his mom and she said that he was high nearly every day for a whole year. started beating her and stealing her money, and came home with black eyes and bruises all the time. I probably should have tried to help him, but I'm not the guy who can sway drug addicts. I'm just happy I dodged that bullet. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.